Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. I am Kisma and I'm so happy you're here today. We have a special episode where we're going to focus on and talk about and dissect all things emotions. Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set.
Well, hello there, Nick.
Hello there, Kisma.
How are you? Sitting across from me in our office at Common Grounds, Carlsbad, California.
I'm fantastic. I'm admiring your new ring.
Can I say, maybe I should put a photo on the show notes. This is from Love 13, Heather Wells, my dear, dear friend, magical goddess, crystal, creator, healer. And yeah, she texted me. She's like, this reminds me of you. And I was like, sold, done.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary.
And I also, can I just say for all of you, so just go to love13.com. It's LOVE hyphen spelled out 13, THIRTEEN.com. I have this mission since anybody out there watching Queer Eye.
Oh,
it's my new favorite
Netflix.
show.
Yeah. Netflix revived it.
They revived it. My new favorite show. And I have this mission of, I want to get one of them to be wearing Love 13.
Ooh.
Yeah.
They would love it too.
I know. I said to Heather, have you watched? She's like, so she has to watch a show, but yeah. That's a manifestation I'm setting for her. They need to be wearing Love 13. They need to be bringing it as they do their little makeovers next year. Yeah. Love that show. Anybody else? Tell me, email me, put in the show notes. Love it.
Yeah. It's truly captivating anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And she has such a gift. She really, she nailed it on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see why that reminded her of you. Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. It's really cool.
It's great.
So we're talking about emotions.
Emotions, capital EMOTIONS. Emotions.
The emotions, all the feels.
The feels.
And I think this is an important topic. It's something that we come back to again and again. But what I've noticed is that there's really two sides of this spectrum. And so in this episode, I want to really look into this first side of it, which is when the emotions really take over and putting too much weight on your emotions.
The processor, the feeling, I've got to feel it.
You got to feel it. You got to go through all this kind of stuff and really like what that actually can do in your life and how very destructive that can be. And then in part two, we want to talk about the whole other end of that spectrum, which is when you pay no attention to your emotions.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Not so great. That'll be the next episode.
And go off the rails that way. So we're gonna do that in a separate episode. But for today, we're really talking about when you get way in the feels and way in the, needing that in order to make a decision or anything like that. It just can be really kind of messy. You know, it reminds me too, I don't know, this has been a topic that's been really important for me for a long time. When I was at the Detroit Symphony, one of the very, very, very first personal development kind of things that I ever did was my boss, Stephen Molina, great mentor.
Love Stephen.
Yeah, such a wonderful person. But he had the cassette tapes of emotional intelligence.
Oh my God. Was he trying to tell you something?
He was, yeah. He was a good mentor, and he was like, oh yeah, I think you'd really enjoy this one. Not that my emotions were way out. Well,
were you an angry bunny?
I did have anger. Yes, I did. But that's you bring up a really good one is the anger. For me, that was something that I was, and I think this is not uncommon with guys in particular, is I would need the anger in order to really propel me.
Oh.
It's like a situation that would have to be so untenable
to get you out of it,
to really motivate me to move.
Unfortunate
and destructive in my life and destructive in my health and all kinds of other ways. But that's what a great example of
angry bunniness.
Yes. Okay.
We've coined a new like term in the personal growth. Get rid of your angry bunniness.
Get rid of your angry bunniness. But I see this conversation, I would like to get more into that too. I do see this conversation very, very misunderstood in a lot of the personal growth realms.
I agree.
But to come back to just that for me is that was something that I needed to do was to get angry about something in order to really affect change.
Yeah.
And
that's energy draining.
It is energy draining. It's energy. It's actually energy giving to start, but it is completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
Because it will break.
Right.
It's just not, it's not a sustainable model at all. That's one of the ways, where that, emotion can be used, but it just really, really misunderstood. And so what that translated into my life was basically that, well, if I really want to affect change in my life, something needs to happen, or I need to get angry enough that I'm going to actually do something about it. Not sustainable.
No.
But what I've seen, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think part of it is kind of generational, but not entirely. It deals with how people, learn and grow and everything like that. But it is something that we see very popular in this youngest generation is really needing things to feel good, really needing people to feel good.
Right.
And it's something that I think that is filtered down through personal growth and understanding emotions and that kind of development, when it's like, okay, well, now everything needs to feel good, and your emotions really matter.
Yeah. And the problem with that is it can feel good one minute, the next minute it doesn't feel good.
Well, yeah.
And then you're kind of like, topsy-turvy, upside down.
Yeah. It's creating a real problem. And I think that's one of the big parts. It's like, okay, well, you need it to feel good. This is where then people wind up getting trophies for participation so that you can feel good about your effort, even if you weren't successful, right? It's also where, we really need to talk everything out, and everybody's got to feel good about where we're at. And that's not really practical in our world.
And it's not always necessary. Sometimes there's just a necessity of respecting one another. And knowing that if you're having a difficult conversation, one person might not feel so great.
Right. That is absolutely true. But however, that can be a great bridge to a higher ground and a higher understanding.
Exactly.
And that might not feel good in the moment. So I want to kind of talk through, I really want to kind of unpack this a little bit, because the need for things to, to feel a certain way can lead to all kinds of destructive patterns. That anger for me was just one example of that. And that is something that I've seen in the personal growth realm, where male coaches in particular seem to misunderstand that anger piece, and it's valuable for an instant, but to really just negate that long-term effect and how unsustainable that is over the long term and what that can do. But other ones is just, well, when we talk about the intuitive components,
right? Okay.
So you're one of the people who is not only very intuitive, but has that willingness to take action based on that intuition. So I really kind of consider you an expert in this topic. But you tell me, is that a feeling? Is it
It depends. People function through their intuition different ways. I just get a direct knowing. It's kind of like a voice, or someone just goes into my head and is like, do this or this or this or this. It's never really a feeling in my body, but I'm not, as we've talked about the ultimate life tool, I'm not emotionally centered. I'm intellectually centered. So it would make sense. If somebody who's more emotionally centered, they might feel it in their gut, in their solar plexus, in their heart. I've talked to many people, it's like, I feel it in my body. I just don't get that.
Sure. Would you say it's an emotion?
Intuition is not an emotion. It is a spiritual faculty. It is a download. It is a knowing.
Yeah. Okay. And when you're acting on it, so let's take this for an example, because you've used that intuition to just guide you in so many different ways in your life. Now, when you're following one of those messages, when you're following that intuitive hit, what sort of emotions do you see come up along the way?
Wow, I've never thought of it that way. I mean, I just go, and often though, when we follow the intuition, if it's a big intuitive hit, it can be a little nerve-wracking or scary. Like, am I supposed to do this? Okay, I don't know. So I just don't equate emotions with intuition. I just go.
You just don't even bring it into it.
I mean, if you bring it in, then you start doubting and then you worry because it can be, I think what we have to understand, I don't want to get off topic of emotions, but intuition will often be bigger. Like your guides, your teachers, your angels might be saying to you, do something that is so extraordinary that you could doubt it. Or the mind could get in and then you mix it up, or the emotions can get entangled in what someone thinks is intuition.
Right. And then it gets confusing.
And then you're wobbling back and forth. And oftentimes what can happen is someone has an intuitive hit and they go and then they get scared and they're like, oh, I don't know, I feel, and then they back out.
Right. And that's an emotion.
That is an emotion that's taking them out of their intuition.
Yeah, which doesn't necessarily feel good while you're following that.
It depends. It depends what you're doing. And, you could always replace that with gratitude, of course. But
well, sure. It makes me think of, I was listening to the Jacko podcast.
Jacko.
I love the Jacko.
I know you do.
I do. I really enjoy it.
Scary, guys. It's a good podcast, but it's freaking scary at times.
Pretty intense. Especially for the Kisma.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it though. And he had on there, one of his guests, was a double amputee. So he had lost both of his legs, above the knee. I believe it was in Afghanistan, and came back, went through recovery. I'm skipping obviously major parts of the story.
Work,
but culminated with him running 31 marathons in 31 days.
I don't know how that's physically possible.
Marathon
for anybody.
A marathon a day for 31 days. It's interesting, right? To hear him talk about it as well. That was one of the things that inspired. This was inspired by a lot of different things, but that was one of them. And how really and truly, when we're taught that our emotions matter so much, and to really give, such high value to the emotions, those will derail you in a minute. Okay? Because, here we are in our regular life. We have all of our limbs and everything like that. We haven't undergone anything that traumatic. Nothing that we're doing is life or death. Okay. And this is true likely for the vast majority of our listeners. Nothing that you're deciding in your life day in and day out is really going to be life or death, like truly life or death. And still we have trouble managing emotions to get to the next goal. Okay. Because maybe you don't feel like doing that thing. Maybe you want that donut or that sugar or that, just that drink at the end of the day. And there's that draw of the mind to have it. And then you just kind of get swept into that need for that, right? Because it feels good.
Right.
You like and you follow that emotion, and then it leads you down that path. And this is just every day trying to stay on track with everyday things. Now put that in the context of, like, really take that out and put it in the context of something that is really intense. Okay. And you realize really quickly that if you let your emotions control you in these little things, they'll derail you in the big things too.
Big time.
It's not that your emotions don't matter. It's just that there needs to be a priority in how you make your decisions that takes you into your highest and best rather than into your emotions.
Or into how it feels.
Well,
it's like what people teach is like, be comfortable being uncomfortable, because being uncomfortable is where the growth can really happen. So I think basically what you're saying is, if we choose what we're going to do based on how we're feeling at that moment, we might not do much. And I remember this back in my music days. There was a famous flutist, Jean-Pierre Rampal, and I went to a class of his, and he was like, forget about feeling good when you go on stage. He's like, throughout my career, I can count on one hand how many times I walked on stage feeling like amazing. You just have to get beyond it. You're here to do what you're here to do. If something's going on or you don't feel like it, it's such a great faculty to have, to check in, with that intellect and be able to not just examine, are these emotions lifting me up or holding me down, but yet to direct the emotions higher.
Yeah. And that's, you bring up a really important topic here that I think really needs to be cleared up as well. Number one, it's not about just letting your emotions call the shots.
No, that's like a Shakespeare play. People, it's not going to go well.
Exactly. It is. Yeah, it's total.
It is not going to go well.
It's a tragedy just waiting to happen.
Love can go to hate so fast, happiness to anger, gratitude to resentment. We have to be able to control and direct those emotions.
Right. And it's not like your emotions don't matter, but
they matter.
But they kind of don't matter.
They matter. It's just we're better off when we can direct them and when they're not running the show.
Right.
The emotions are not driving the car.
That's a softer way of putting that. Thank you. But then that brings us to the next step is like, okay, well, you talk about bringing those emotions to something higher. Okay. Well, what is that? Like, what can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, the way I've brought it up with some of my students, like in our Mindset to Get Your Prosperity Set course, is the moment you ask the question, is this all there is? Not sarcastically, not out of lack, but like when someone stops and says, isn't there something else? You get this hit that, heck yeah, there's not just something else, but it's so miraculous and so extreme in its abundance and its miracles that you will be flooded with emotion of the higher, whether it's devotion or gratitude or joy. That's the kind of emotion that you want flowing through you. And it's just being able to ask that one question. So one basically contemplates more than just themselves. I feel like it's exiting the selfish mind and into the unselfish mind. Because when we're selfish, we're riddled with that low vibe emotion of like, poor me, or I want it's just, ugh.
I, and me.
I, me. And when someone leads action from I, me, and all that, it's just, yeah, you can persevere and you can will yourself through it. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. And it's basically you against the world.
Yeah. It's heavy. And then you have a bigger chance of being derailed.
Now, when you're moving from the lower to the higher, this is kind of an important transition where if you just kind of like happy over it, like, oh, well, I need to be feeling good, so I'm just going to like,
no, that doesn't work.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, well, I need to feel good in order to do this, so I'm just going to pretend that I'm happy and like fake it till I make it. And I think that can work for a minute, but I don't think that's ultimately really sustainable, and it doesn't really give you the or express the emotional maturity that you're describing, which is really about transmuting that emotion in towards something higher. Now, the way that I think about that, and tell me if I'm, because I think I'm understanding what you're saying, and I think we're kind of saying the same thing. But how I think about that is when I have a goal, like I have some pretty big goals for energy mastery this year. We want to help a lot of people with what we're doing, and there's all sorts of facets to that. And if I get really stuck down into how I'm feeling each and every day, it's super easy to just be like, screw it, that's a big goal. I'm never going to get there.
I think I'll watch Queer Eye instead of like meeting with my clients.
Exactly. Or picking up the phone or doing whatever other things that I know that I need to be doing in order to get there. And at the same time, if I just, then just barrel my way through those things, or pretend that I'm really happy when I'm really feeling kind of frustrated or something like that, now I'm really stuck in a whole different kind of place. So how I think about it is like, is that highest goal, right? Is keeping one eye always on that highest goal
ideal. And
also then the really and truly some of the emotions around that, which is like, that's exciting.
Yeah. And joy and gratitude.
Yeah.
Devotion.
And it lets me track towards the highest so that I can be more objective to those lower emotions.
Right. Yeah. That's beautiful. I think that's great. And it's a great design to stay on track and focus and elevate everything towards an ideal. For me, what I see happen when I've talked to certain people or coached certain people, when they get in too much into, I need to process this, I need to feel it, I need to think about it, that's a recipe for just spinning around in quicksand, as far as I'm concerned. It means that the ability for your intellect to be front and center, to discern, for one thing, what's true and what isn't true. Because our emotions can wreak havoc and take us out of a true decision or statement or action. And so when we have to constantly process, we can be processing for lifetimes, people. We need to move forward. Sorry, it's my version of the personal growth. I just had a talk with someone who's helping me with messaging, and she was laughing so hard. She goes, "Yeah, that's pretty much your messaging. Don't process for lifetimes. Like, let's go." That's why action is so important.
Yeah. Who was it? We were at an event that one time, and hey, how's it going? What are you up to these days? Oh, I'm just processing a lot of. Do you
God
remember?
bless. No, I don't, but I'm sure I blocked it out.
I was so great. I was standing there just so everybody's kind of up to speed. We were standing. There's a pretty big event. We were standing around. We met somebody that we hadn't seen in quite a while, and Kisma, just being her light and sparkly self, is like, "Hey, it's so great to see you. How's everything going for you?" And this kind of heavy person was like, "Oh, I'm just processing a lot of emotional trauma these days." And
Aw, poor guy.
Yeah, I know. And the look on your face was just priceless. It was just like, okay, then. Great to see you.
Only because I think that's what he was doing a year ago.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was the same conversation.
It's the exact same conversation.
This brings to another piece, everyone, is to note that when someone is addicted to processing emotions, they're getting something out of staying in this quicksand of I'm going to process. No one wants to minimize the pain that anyone has been through. I certainly do not. People I work with have been through just amazingly difficult, traumatic experiences. Yes, we have to look at that. And yes, there's a processing, and yes, there's a letting go. But when we're just doing that all the time in life because we're feeding this addiction of getting some attention, whether it's just from ourselves, we don't get across the bridge. And the intellect is so tired, and then the emotions are just ruling, which can mean everything from just, I think I'll check out, to I'm going to go crazy and do all this stuff, to I'm going to watch TV. I'm not going to watch, it's not sustainable.
Right.
It's a roller coaster. I mean, that is the roller coaster of life.
And that is the nature of addiction.
Yeah.
Is that roller coaster. And you bring up a really, really cool aspect of that. And thanks for saying that, because I hope that nobody got the idea that I'm
absolutely
making
not.
light of that.
No.
I'm not at all. It was just like, okay, well, you were doing that same thing a year ago, and you're, nothing has changed.
Right.
And the look on your face truly was priceless. I'll never forget that. What I meant to say is that, okay, when you're processing that, there seems to be a misunderstanding that just because you have trauma, and like you said, we've worked with people with significant trauma, that it has to be hard. And it has to be really you got to dig all through the emotions and weigh in through all this old past stuff and everything like that. And it's going to take a long time, and you're going to have to process all those kinds of things. I think that seems to be the common understanding of that. And I have not seen that to be true at all.
No, miracle healing happens all the time in our world. It doesn't mean that you don't sit in it for a while and people have their experiences. I think we're doing a great disservice when someone says, "Oh, it's going to take years to get over that."
I agree.
Stop it. We have a whisper of time on this planet. And I think the more that we're willing to let go and move on and grab what the gem of wisdom is from that experience and then move forward and elevate, it's so much more rewarding rather than pulling down.
Right. And it can happen, I think, with so much more ease.
Right.
With the tools that we use, certainly it happens with so much more ease than people would have ever thought possible. We've seen people with pretty, really significant traumas. I mean, you name it, we can go down the whole list, but really significant traumas. And then it just becomes not a factor in their lives. So you think about, okay, well, and it's understandable why people might not want to face that or might not really want to dive into that, or they get stuck along the way, is because there is this idea that, it's going to take a long time and it's going to be really hard and everything like that. And it's it almost seems harder than just staying and keeping the trauma that you have.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so they stay with it and feel from that.
Because, okay, well, at least I know what this is like, and I'm kind of functioning in my life, So, okay, well, it's better than dredging up all that old crap and living all through it again. And so it makes it harder to make that step.
Right.
And what I've seen is when somebody's willing to step into that with a technology behind them that really can unwind that in a much more organic way without all of that crazy, then on the other side of that, it's funny to talk to him because so many people I've talked to, it's almost like, oh yeah, I remember I used to have that. Mm-hmm. There's this distance from it that, in the way that they are and the way that they function in their lives and the way that they relate to other people is just so radically different. Mm-hmm. And once that has been removed, then they're just a brand new person.
Yes. Clear.
I mean, think about some of the retreats that we've led or some of the trainings that we've done where, by day 2, you look at somebody at the end of day 2 and it's like, whoa, like I
different
can
person.
see you, like your face has changed.
Yes, that always does happen when a transformation happens. The face changes, the body changes, the energy changes.
Yeah. And it's really fascinating how that happens. But I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about that addiction to that drama cycle.
And, for those of you listening, the way that we know this is happening is we're not leveling up our results, whether it's we desire to be more happy, we desire to be more free. If we're not getting that, we have to look at, well, what are we holding on to that is a lower vibe emotion? Mm-hmm. And what are we getting by holding on? And if there's drama or chaos in our lives, that we're hanging on, we're holding on, because sort of like what you said with anger, Nick, that the drama and the chaos of emotion can fuel one forward.
Right.
Just that, propulsion forward using that, where it would be, we'd have such less energy drain by just getting through that, letting it go, processing as quickly as you can, cleaning up energetically, and then being very clean and clear in one's vision.
Right. You got it. When you solve the energy first, you shortcut all of that other, shortcut's not the right word. You bypass all that other stuff. And here's how that misunderstanding gets formed. Okay. I'll just use myself as an example. I've been trying, had been trying to do certain things. One of those things was just, be more successful with my trumpet and be more committed to my career as a musician, rather than my career as a manager. Okay. So I tried a million different ways, and it was really difficult for me to have balance and to really stay committed to that. And finally one day I just got pissed off enough that I really fully committed to that. And then I was like, oh, well, that was the thing that helped me to make the change. And then my primal brain was like, okay, well, if this, then that, if then, okay, great. So moving forward, now I know that if I get angry enough, I'll be able to make a change. And so then it forms that pattern.
Right.
And it's the same patterns that people will run when they get sad or hurt, or they get that neediness for attention.
Or fights in relationships to make up, to become closer.
Exactly. Oh, I'm missing intimacy in my relationship. So I'm going to go and make a drama and make a fight so that then we can make up, and then we'll have the intimacy again.
It's draining.
But that's how it gets registered in the brain.
Yeah.
And it's not your fault. It's like, okay, well, that's exactly what your brain is just putting the pieces together.
There's a whole world showing people this as well, demonstrating this.
Yeah, just flip on
and teaching this.
any TV show, and you'll see all these patterns play out, where, the hero's going through their drama and they get to that bottom
that
pit.
Hero story, man.
But it is. This is a story that has been told for eons. That is basically hardwired into our brains,
right.
And it is at that lower point, that rock bottom, where then they really get together, and then there's a montage, and the montage, and the hero's doing his thing, and he's getting his groove on, and like Rocky's working out, and he's going through his thing, and he's angry at the Russian dude or Apollo Creed or whoever he is. He's getting pissed off, and then he goes in there and he gets in the ring and then he does his thing. And what does he do? What does Rocky do? Right? Great hero archetype story is then he's in the ring and he's letting Clubber Lang hit him again and again. And the coach is in the corner. He's like, what is he doing? What is he doing? And then the other guy's like, well, he's getting mad.
Dude, why are we talking about Rocky?
Because I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but that's what it was. But that's what he needed in order to win that fight. And that's been played out again and again in a million different stories.
Yeah, I guess so.
So bypassing that, you really got to recognize that that's no small feat, because any great story that's ever been told really connects at an emotional level, and it uses those emotions to drive. And then it's a natural thing to understand. It's a natural conclusion to draw, I should say, that all of a sudden, okay, well, your emotions really matter. Well, your emotions actually don't matter that much for you to get to that goal.
You can do it without.
You can 100%
the anger, without the break.
You can 100% get to your goals without any emotional attachment to that or involvement. Now, when you actually get there, will you be happy? Probably not. But that's what we're going to talk in the next episode about really, understanding your emotions and repressing them along the way, because that just sets up a whole other cycle that's really destructive.
Right. So it's not ignoring emotions. It's not repressing. It's just understanding what your emotions can do for you and how to manage them.
And I love what you talked about. Like the thing that I really took away from this was transmuting from the lower to the higher. So when you find yourself in those lower emotions, is reconnecting with the higher,
Yeah, I mean, because, what I would argue back with you is like, actually, there is one emotion that really matters, and that's gratitude, because it lifts up the field.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So without that, actually, one can be pretty complacent.
Yeah, I agree. That being said, people can be wildly successful in their lives without any gratitude.
Yeah.
Is it sustainable?
No.
Not even close. So truly, it's like when it comes to really achieving your goals in life and doing something that has great impact in the world, somewhere along the way, emotions became really important to people, and they're really not that important in order to do that. In order to be a whole human being, yes, your emotions are important.
Right.
That's it's an integral part of your personality and your embodiment here in the planet. And that does need to be mastered.
Right.
And matured in a way. And that's what we're going to talk about more in the next episode.
Yeah. For me, it's about understanding what is required to happen, not waiting to feel a certain way to do it, to take your consistent action to get your consistent results, to serve in the highest and best, and keep on living life.
Yep.
And if you feel like you're going to get derailed, or someone's upset you, or you've got drama, see what you can do to get beyond that, because we're really here to express and manifest and act and create. And if we're waiting around to feel a certain way or to resolve something, it just takes up precious time.
It does. Yeah. And this is why I think coaching and mentoring is so important, whether it's for life or whether it's for a business or a project, or whether it's for healing or for whatever it is. The coaching does have a really important role because it helps you to stay on track towards that highest and best.
Absolutely.
Towards that highest goal for your life.
Right.
But really and truly, if you're entering into a relationship like that without that goal, it's already going to be upside down.
Right.
Because you need something to move towards.
Yes.
And that helps just having that thing to move towards is really what helps to create that emotional objectivity.
I love it.
Cool topic.
Yeah. We'll share some more tips and tools in the next episode. But for now, observe. Like really observe where it is you stop because you might not be feeling it, where it is you don't trust because you've got a little inkling of maybe worry or fear, or don't feel like you're good enough. Just like go and stay on the path of action that you're meant to be on.
Yes. Amen.
Amen. All right, everyone. And I'm going to put, I think a book that many of you would enjoy is called Letting Go, the David Hawkins book. We'll put a link in the show notes. Really good about just letting go and a quick processing of emotions. And make sure you tune in next week, because we'll definitely have some tips and tools on how to direct those emotions upward.
Can't wait.
All right. Namaste, everyone.
Peace.
Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.